sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. My name is Virginia Jones. I'm a stand-up comedian. I didn't do much school, but my sister's a therapist.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to laughter alchemist Virginia Jones.
Oh, my Lord. I did get an undergrad degree. I'm not...
In laughter alchemy?
In laughter alchemy. You know, Eugene Merman went to a small school in Boston where you can design your own degree, and he did get a stand-up comedy degree.
Oh, wow. You just watch a bunch of Robin Williams videos?
I have no idea. I have no idea what it was, but you can evidently get one.
You watch Eddie Murphy's Raw every week?
Yeah. You get a watch list. Your senior year, you watch only Bill Hicks and Billy Connolly and Stuart Lee.
Got it.
Like freshman year is Robin Williams and Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy, right.
For the basics.
You work your way up.
Laura, it's your topic this week. What would you like to talk about?
We're going to talk about self-help. Is it helpful?
Oh, that's interesting. Just my initial thoughts on the topic. I love a good self-help book. I've said it before. When you find a book that really addresses something that you've been concerned about yourself, people love talking about themselves and people love thinking about themselves. And I think that that's the joy of a self-help book.
But does it actually move the needle? I remember reading a study, which of course I haven't looked up. It was about those weekend retreats that people go on where they walk on fiery rocks and
in the late
90s.
Yeah, in the 90s. Everybody was walking on hot rocks.
They took those people months or years later and just checked in because at the time everyone said, I'm forever changed. This is it. And what they found was that none of those people were changed immediately following the workshop.
So when you say change, let's define it.
First, let's define self-help.
Okay.
Self-help is the action or process of bettering oneself or overcoming one's problems without the aid of others, especially the coping with one's personal or emotional problems without professional help.
Is this just an extended ad for you need therapy? Is that what this is? You're just trying to line your pockets?
Basically, yes. Let's find out. Self-Help or SELF-HOAX by ALANSA Bates. There's a new realization that has helped me to understand why self-help books are only ever intermittently and unpredictably helpful. My suggestion is not to avoid self-help books. If life isn't going the way you would like it to, it could be helpful to read some inspirational and instructive material. The critical thing to remember is that if someone else's ideas don't work for you, that's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's because they are not your ideas. Take what you want and keep reading. Find another book, walk in the woods, join a club, listen to advice, scour the internet, go for a run,
eat an orange,
enroll in a seminar that might or might not help you.
Make a birdhouse, walk on rocks.
Do you make the birdhouse in your soul?
Yes.
What a lot of these authors are saying is that self-help is essentially a quote unquote professional's ideas. And anyone can write a self-help book. Like Richard Simmons wrote one. I don't know if that was the move. What is he a professional in?
Everyone who can write a self-help book is writing it from their perspective. Richard Simmons says, I was fat and unhappy and it was ruining my life. But then I started wearing tiny shorts and running around and it made everything better. Rest in power, Richard Simmons.
Richard Simmons, as I've learned recently on one of my favorite podcasts, Maintenance Phase, they did a 2-episode thing about Richard Simmons, and he had a really active eating disorder. Apparently, all of his hair fell out, and he got really, really sick, and he was hospitalized. And then, according to him, he found the healthy way to maintain his weight loss.
I know there's a lot of messaging to young men that all of your problems will be solved if you go to the gym. Yeah, you will have a nice body if you go to the gym, but that's not a solution for your problems.
No, the problem with a lot of self-help books is they're just written by a person who has no clinical background or isn't a doctor and is just a person. Like, what was that woman? She looked like a cotton ball.
Susan Powder.
There you go. What was her book? Screaming
Stop
Up?
No, it was Stop
Screaming.
the Insanity. It was Stop the Insanity, but the insanity was just about what you were eating. She was only concerned with your body. I have not read a tremendous number of self-help books. I think that The Artist's Way has a self-help element, but it is mostly about creativity. But of course, we talked about it on the show, how much Attached helped me. But that was written by 2 therapists. I guess I haven't read a lot of self-help books just by regular people. The hard thing about that is that a person can tell you what worked for them, but that's not necessarily going to work for you. It's like your parents raised you with all the lessons that they learned and everything that they have incorporated in their lives. But that news is 20 years old. Everyone can tell you what they did, but that doesn't mean it's going to be what you can do.
So the idea is that self-help books are democratic. They reach thousands of people who would never go to a therapist because of inaccessibility, cost, or simply resistance to discussing personal problems with a stranger. The push towards testing is discouraging of lots of would-be self-help authors because the process is time-consuming and expensive. It took 2 years to test different versions of his book, The Migraine Relief, Kohlenberg, on hundreds of people. Through the testing, Kohlenberg uncovers what we call the number one problem with self-help books, which is a lack of follow-through. Even though his subjects were willing and motivated, only 20% read the entire book and a mere 2 to 4% complied with all the book's suggestions. We now know that people do practically none of what you say, he laments.
In your estimation, how much of your suggestions get incorporated into your clients' lives?
Actually, kind of a lot, but I think it's because I'm checking up on them every week.
Right.
A lot of times I will tell them to read these books and they wouldn't read them except that they know that I'm going to check on them next week and make sure that they do it.
Because the communication is one way. It's not checking up on you. It doesn't have expectations of you. There's very little motivation to follow through.
And I'm not going to say that for me, self-help books have not been incredibly helpful because they have. I remember reading a book called Divorce Busting when I was in a very bad marriage. It was really helpful because the perspective was, I can't change other people. I can only change myself.
That's a profound lesson.
It is. It's applied to lots of parts of my life. That little nugget of wisdom has really carried me through a lot of things. I can keep my side of the street clean in our relationship, but I can't keep your side of the street clean.
I'm looking at lists of self-help books online and just kind of remembering what a social phenomenon some of them were that's just moved on. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Absolute crap. Our father was so into this idea, I think because it confirmed for him, his biases. Like, oh, well, we're just different. But there's some self-help books that have continued to be important. The Power of Positive Thinking, people still talk about. Right now, all self-help books have the F word in them.
Yes,
starting with The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, which I've read and enjoyed. How to un-F your life. Well, you got to have the F word to really shake people up. Are you writing a self-help book? Can you put the F word in the title?
I actually am writing a self-help book, and my sister encouraged me to take the swear words out.
Yes, I did. Because of promoting it on the internet.
People who don't follow all the directions, or even those who do but have an ineffective book, often put themselves in a no-win situation. If they don't improve after trying a book, they might feel like a failure and find that their problem worsens. Self-help books can also be time-consuming dead ends. An example, Kohlenberg says, is the trend in affirmations, repeating to yourself positive thoughts such as I'm a lovable person in an attempt to improve self-esteem. But self-affirmations do not help at all with self-esteem problems, he says. People must instead work on their relationships with other people. That's one of my least favorite things about self-help, because if I don't truly love myself and I'm just saying it over and over again, it's going to be hollow. I'm not going to take it in, and it's going to make absolutely no change in my perspective. There are a lot of great self-help books, but I guess my point is even the best self-help book is probably not going to be as good as talking with a friend or seeing a clinician or taking a class or doing something more long-term.
So tell me more about affirmations. Why don't affirmations work? Because I know people who are very, very...
Yeah, our mother is way into affirmations, but use her as our case study. She's been doing affirmations since the 80s. Have they helped one bit?
Doesn't she keep doing them because they make her feel better in the moment?
I think she's doing them because she's trying to stop her negative self-talk, but it's not working. You can't tell yourself something that you inherently do not believe.
Right. It's not helpful.
Well, it's not going to go in. Your mind is going to reject it. This is a game that I like to play with my clients. Instead of saying, I am a wonderful person and I love myself, I ask myself the question, what if I was a wonderful person and I loved myself? Because my brain can take that in. It goes, oh, okay, well, what if I was? This is what I would be doing. This is how my life would be different. But if I'm just saying it and my brain doesn't believe it, it's just going to bat it away and it's going to be completely a waste of time. I guess my thought is a lot of this stuff is just a time suck where you think I'm investing in myself and I'm doing things, but it's actually not going to go anywhere.
Let's talk a little bit about the pleasure of self-help, because I think it is like astrology. People love reading something and recognizing themselves in it. And they love the belief that that thing is going to help them.
I remember when I got divorced, someone told me to read Stop Walking on Eggshells. But as I was reading it, I realized, oh my God, my ex-husband had borderline personality disorder.
Right.
It's like she was recording our phone calls or something. And I realized, oh, this is a pattern and this is consistent and this is not about me specifically. This is just the way that he relates to the world. So yeah, that book was incredibly helpful in the way that I perceive the world.
Other self-help books that I have enjoyed, I'm looking at a list of the top selling self-help books on Amazon. Atomic Habits is very popular right now. I have read that. It is the idea that you can't achieve a big goal in one day. You need to make incremental movements towards that goal. And I think that that's just good practical advice.
Have you ever listened to the podcast, If Books Could Kill?
No.
Well, they broke down Atomic Habits. And
Really?
They hated it so much. Oh, here's an idea, but it doesn't give practical ways to execute.
It doesn't capture the nuances of habit building. It just tells you build this habit.
That's where a coach or a therapist or
Right.
somebody who's got training would be more effective and more helpful. By the time people come in my office, they've read all the self-help books. Yeah, they're still horribly depressed or they're still really struggling because it's not the same.
Another top self-help book, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. And I know
Yes.
that my sister is a big proponent of that.
I am a big proponent of that book. If I read The Body Keeps the Score and didn't do any kind of somatic work or EMDR therapy, what that would end up doing is I would just keep going, oh, my body's being triggered. This is an experience from my trauma, but I'm not doing
You can't-
anything to change it.
You can't resolve it. Another one that I have enjoyed is Buddhism from a guy who lives in the woods in California, The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. We were talking about this in an earlier episode. Rick Rubin is a supremely rich guy who has become this low-key Buddhist. It has affected his work philosophy. And he's like, don't do too much, just try things and don't go in with a lot of expectations of how it's going to be. What will be, will be. But it's because he got rich, he got famous, but he didn't get happy, I expect.
Well, he got rich by exploiting Black people and copying their music and reproducing it with white people.
If you talk to white people about how the Beastie Boys are problematic, they get really upset.
It's because the Beastie Boys, as humans, are decent humans.
Decent guys.
I think if we met them in the early 80s, they probably weren't that decent.
I tweeted on a website that used to be very popular and it's now gone down the crap hole. I don't trust any white man who really, really likes the Beastie Boys. 6 months later, a man came up to me at a Christmas party who's a comic, and he said, your tweet about the Beastie Boys really hurt me.
Well, you were criticizing white men, which is
Right.
not
I guess
not
I'm not
okay.
supposed to do that.
No. If you look at the Beastie Boys objectively, when you listen to their music and their interviews lately, not the stuff that they made in the 80s, they are objectively good people and they have interesting ideas and they are expansive in their worldview and they do make really interesting music. But you have to remember that fundamentally what they were doing was being a bunch of affluent Jewish kids who stole music from Black people, exploited it, and then became huge artists as a result.
Chicken Soup for the Soul was a book that was so popular.
Listener, if the Chicken Soup books fundamentally changed you as a person, please email in and let us know how much it changed you.
The author said chicken soup phrase appeared to him in a dream in which the hand of God scrawled them across a chalkboard. They had chicken soup for the Latino soul, the working woman, the veteran soul. They were incredibly popular for a second.
For more than a second. I think it was about 5 to 10 years. He was really making money hand over fist.
Chicken soup for the pet lover's soul. They were very popular because they were very positive and warm. Unlike chicken soup, not nourishing, just warm and cozy.
Right.
In the end, they went bankrupt because they had overextended and they couldn't, honestly, I don't think they could think of anyone else's soul that needed chicken soup.
We talk about chicken soup for the soul a lot in the book, The Secret, written by a person, again, who doesn't have any qualifications.
Yeah.
She's just a lady who has, much like the Beastie Boys, stolen a lot of Eastern philosophy, culminated all of it together into this little neat package that Americans like.
What we've talked about before is that it's very easy for white women to talk about positive thinking and affirmation and manifesting, because when you're a white woman in this society, things you want tend to come true if you have some money.
Or if you marry well.
You're like, oh my God, I wanted a Porsche and now I have one. Oh my God, I wanted my kids to get into this private school and now they did.
My boss made us listen to that a lot at work, the audiobook of The Secret. This woman is Australian. A coworker and I used to always go, I keep getting chicks in the mail. I'm picturing chicks in the mail. And then I opened my mailbox and what was it? Loads of chicks in the mail.
I don't think you should mail chicks unless you're with a service that does that professionally, because they need air. They need not to be jostled around too much. What you don't want is a bunch of dead chicks in the mail.
But what if you want chicks in the mail? You write a letter to the universe requesting chicks in the mail. Self-help is a very American ideal. And indeed, the idea of helping oneself autonomously seems to be the perfect fit for the independent American spirit. Self-help books appeal to the DIY personality, says G. Alan Marlett, UW professor of psychology and director of the Addictive Behaviors Research Center. He talks about the fact that there are certain types of self-help we should avoid. Avoid books that don't offer data to support their conclusions. They don't have bibliographies. They promise permanent change, and they purport to be the universal answer to the problem. Therefore, The Secret is a book to avoid because I'm pretty sure it does all of those things.
I'm a little resistant to this idea that self-help books are never helpful because I have friends who are obsessed with them. Are those friends mentally well? I don't know. But I guess one thing that's exciting about self-help books is that idea. You've read a book over 2 days, you've digested it over a weekend, and now the positivity, the optimism of your life starting now.
Well, just like when I attend a Tony Robbins workshop, right, and before he essays me, I walk on hot rocks. I feel amazing right after the workshop. But
because why? Because you're flooded with adrenaline, you're flooded with dopamine,
neuroepinephrine, and all the things. And I've been pumped up. I've had this continuous positive messaging coming at me, but then I have to go back to my regular crappy life and deal with it. I can read this book all weekend, which is great. But then on Monday morning, I still have to go back to my thankless job and try to live in reality.
And work with people who don't treat me the way I wish to be treated, and live with my family that I have conflicts with.
Exactly. In the article, Why Self-Help Books Don't Help from the Neuroscience School, contemporary self-help teachings are attractive because they assure us that we are the makers of our own destiny. They preach that we have within us the power to change our lives for the better, even to make ourselves anew. Although this is true, the focus on personal responsibility distracts us from structural inequities, such as unequal access to quality education, healthcare, etc. That's what I'm talking about. When I get spit out of this magical weekend of reading my self-help book or attending this workshop, I'm back in the drudgery of life where things are not fair, where I really don't control my destiny in a lot of ways, where I can't afford healthcare, or when I can't afford housing, where my boss is sexually harassing me. And I have to figure out how to manage life. And this book is not going to do that for me.
I'll tell you something interesting from the world of comedy, which is what I mostly think about. There is a lot of fake it till you make it and big up yourself and tell everybody how great you are. Laura had a negative experience in Austin, Texas with a person who we won't name. Someone mentioned that we had a podcast, which is this one. And the woman jumped in and said, well, I have a podcast and I interviewed the celebrity and I'm doing really well. And Laura was really turned off by it. And I said, well, that's just how comics talk, because if you don't big up yourself and promote yourself, no one else is going to do it.
I just think it's weird. That's not going to get me interested in you, because I feel like if you're trying to sell me something, which a podcast is technically free, but if you want me to listen to your podcast, I have to be interested in you. If I experience you as this blowhard person who's really full of herself and isn't asking me any questions and doesn't seem like an interesting person, why would I listen to your podcast?
An element that I have observed not to be helpful, but that gets told to us a lot is picture success. Tell yourself you're happy. When you experience feelings of jealousy, tell yourself you're not jealous. And along with show your best life on social media. So much of comedy is trying to show other comics that you're successful. and trying to generate envy in others. There's a phenomenon where you're talking to someone about how great you're doing and all the great projects you're doing, but it creates this feeling of cognitive dissonance because your brain knows that that's not true or that you don't think that's true. And so we have this tenet of just like constant positivity blast. I'm doing so great. I'm doing all these shows. Famous people are noticing me, but you become depressed and anxious because your brain's like, that's not true.
It's the same as I am great mantras. If you don't believe it, it's just going to feel hollow and it's going to make you feel bad.
Having moved away from Los Angeles 6 months ago, and I really did love Los Angeles and my experience there, one thing that I've become aware of is just that cycle of promoting yourself, creating the brand of yourself as a successful comic, and shows that you're doing not because someone's going to discover you or because you're going to make money or because you're going to reach this audience, just so you can tell people you're doing shows. I think that when you're there, it's so much a noise and you're so used to it, the din, you forget that it's kind of empty. And that's my big philosophy on that.
Yeah. Circling back to self-help books. If you're not in the state of mind to actively change, these books are essentially pointless. This is an issue that continues to bother me, Ellie Baker, the author of this article. They are marketed as a solution when self-help books should not be seen as a replacement to professional attention. They can be a confidence boost or advice for a bad day, but nothing more than that. The main reason is often the reader, him or herself. When reading a self-help book, it is us who decides whether or not to do something with it. And usually we don't. We have a glance at the book, read the blurbs, or even actually read the book, but then we go on minding our usual business, and we can freely do that. There's no therapist, coach, or teacher telling us what to do or keeping us on track.
And we are moving into the holidays, which means we'll have New Year's and people are going to have resolutions. A hard thing about sticking to a plan, trying to form a habit, is when you start it, you have all this intention and energy behind it. But then the days go on and you go to sleep and you wake up and maybe that energy is a little bit diminished. Other things distract you and you make excuses. I very much understand the energy of finishing a book and saying, this is going to change my life, but then my life keeps on being my life. While you might pick up a good idea or be inspired, it's largely a placebo effect. Like it feels good to do, but it's not medicine.
If you're doing it properly. For example, I was in a relationship with an abusive person and we read Anger Busting 101, as he was referred to by his therapist. And that book has been instrumental in my life and in my practice because it talks about this idea of anger as a compulsion and addiction. And in order to stop it, you have to make a decision to not act on it. There's a workbook that goes with it. And so I've taken this knowledge and I've shared it with lots of people. And I think it's a really good supplemental thing in addition to therapy, but I just don't think it's a replacement for therapy.
And there will be self-help books that are helpful that you get good ideas from, but without additional elements, it's not going to move the needle. You did recommend Anger Busting 101 to me when I was in a relationship with someone who had anger problems. And the great thing about that is then he picked fights with me about it. And he told me he was not angry and he wasn't like the men in the book. And I said, okay.
A lot of times I will see couples and usually it's an angry man who's being abusive to his partner. And when I ask them to read the book, they come back saying, well, the men in this book are physically harming people. And I don't do that.
Because I have not physically put hands on you. I don't.
And I'm not abusing you. Right. I've had a lot of big aha moments from self-help books. Codependent No More. I remember I was on a beach with my partner at the time and my brain was exploding. So I was realizing, oh my gosh, I do all this stuff. And I was trained from birth to do all this stuff because this is what my mother does. And this is what all the relationships I've ever had are based on. It was really enlightening. And I took that book to my therapy and used it in therapy.
You're right that self-help books are a modern American phenomenon in the form that they are today. You're going to eat, pray, love. You're going to have some chicken soup in your soul. The self-help writer becomes a celebrity in their own right. And then they're like, wow, this is the way to become a celebrity is you write a self-help book and the cycle continues. But people have been writing instructional manuals on living for a much longer time. In ancient Egypt, there was a code of behavior book with criticisms like, you trail from street to street, smelling of beer, like a broken rudder, good for nothing. Cicero in Rome wrote books on friendship and duties. Ovid wrote The Art of Love and The Remedy of Love. They were books about how to comport yourself in public. Sex manuals, how to be sociable. This has been something that people have always wanted to have. How do I make my life better? How do I get along better with people? So although the self-help book in American pop culture is its own bear, people have always been interested in collections of thoughts, direction. And Cicero didn't have therapy. This is all you could do.
And I think also I do support the idea of a mass-produced book that lots of people have access to. Because if I'm in a medieval village, I'm not going to have access to a therapist. Or a lot of these books I read when I was in college where I couldn't afford therapy. I needed something, and it filled a gap in my life. As I keep saying, it's not everything. It is a thing, and I think it's helpful, but I feel like there's a lot more. And I also feel like it's the way you do it. Because of my ADHD, I have a tendency to just sort of skim through things. I was listening to an audiobook today, and I found myself sort of zoning out in the middle of the book and missing probably really salient and important points. Am I actually taking it in, or am I just doing the exercise of reading?
Part of the fun of self-help books is how quickly you can get through them. But how much of that information are you taking in when you're just reading something on the toilet as fast as you can?
Before your children wake up. Last but not least, Madison Fry wrote an article about self-help, and she said, the self-help book industry has become increasingly popular and is expected to keep rising in popularity in the next few years. It was found that the industry was worth $10 billion in 2018. People who purchase self-improvement books have likely bought another during the previous 18 months. If it doesn't work for a specific individual, he or she is on to the next book that might bring more promise. I could see why this is a pattern among those who contribute to the self-help book industry. Buying a book for $20 or $30 is a lot easier than paying for a therapist or getting on medication. Many people cannot afford a therapist or a doctor or even a prescription. Today's society is always pushing us to be the best version of ourselves, especially on the internet. There are expectations that we as a society should be maximizing our experiences as best we can in order to match expectations and those around us who are perceived to do the same.
Years ago, I was talking to a woman, and she was looking for a book of affirmations for her son because she said, well, he's a salesman and he really needs to read these so he can feel good about his job and selling more. And I remember thinking to myself, well, he's unhappy. A book telling him that he's the greatest is not going to be a long-term solve for that.
Exactly. He needs to look into, is this the career for me? Am I actually cut out for sales? Is this something that gives me meaning or is helpful to me? And start there. I don't think affirmations are going to help him with that. But our society is always pushing us to be the best. As a society, we are obsessed with optimizing every part of our lives, our eating, our sleeping, our studying, our exercise, our relationshiping is what this says, and of course, working. So while self-help books seem in essence useless and arguably more damaging, they do have the power to be useful if one takes them as a realistic approach. Our mentality as a society has generated a sense of immediateness in everything we do and making us imagine that a self-help book is a quick fix to making us better. This is what I experience when I have a new hypnosis client. I was talking to a colleague who was saying she's really struggling. She's trying to get people into the hypnotherapy, and they are looking for a pill. They're just looking for something quick where zero effort is applied, and that's it. And so what I told her was, when I bring a person in for hypnotherapy, they don't want to do therapy. Right. They're not interested in that. They just want me to raise my magic wand and fix their problem. A lot of people, in honesty, ask me if I can fix all their problems in one appointment. And they mean it, and they're serious. They don't understand the complexity of your experiences, your trauma, your brain, and everything that's ever happened to you. And also, they're thinking about their pocketbook. It's expensive to do therapy for a long time, and they don't want to put in the effort or anything else. I have that a lot. I have people who are like, well, I need to quit smoking. And so I say, okay, cool. So why are you smoking? I don't know. Well, you're smoking because you're super stressed out. You're not sleeping enough. You're not taking care of yourself. Your relationship is on the rocks. You're going to lose your job soon. We've got to look at all the things. People are not so cut and dry and simple. Ultimately, it is a tool. And I think it can be a super useful tool, but you need to do it in tandem with other things. And it might also be your gateway drug into therapy, because I've experienced that too. I've experienced people coming to see me after they read Codependent No More, or after they looked at the book Attached. That's been a huge one. A lot of people come to me after they've read Attached because they realize, oh my gosh, this isn't just me picking poorly. This is a lot of my wounding affecting my relationships. So, Virginia, in closing, what are your final thoughts on the topic of self-help?
Not to just parrot what you said, but I think self-help books can lead you towards bigger things to solve, such as I keep having the same relationship again and again because my attachment style is what it is, and I'm attracted to people who have the direct opposite attachment style. This issue will not resolve. It's not that I'm looking for a specific person who's going to be able to help me with this. I think self-help books can be useful in recognizing patterns and issues that you need to work on. But I agree that it is like a Band-Aid. It is something that's going to be really inspirational in the moment, but may not have the solution that's going to fix your life and your relationship and your career. Is not something you're going to pick up at the B. Dalton at the airport.
Agreed.
What are your last thoughts on this topic?
My final thoughts are this is a good intro to therapy. I think it can be a great companion piece to therapy. I find when I refer someone to a book, I'm looking at it as I can't do therapy with you 24 hours a day, but you can take this book home. Here's some support for the work we're doing. And this might give you more insights and more ideas. I was talking to a friend just today about her struggles with binge eating. And I was telling her, well, I read this great book called Overcoming Overeating by Hirschman and Munter. And when I read it, one of the things I learned is that if you keep introducing one of your problem foods into your day-to-day diet and giving yourself plenty of access to that food, it will eventually become less interesting. And I was telling her about all the foods that I've gotten rid of. I don't care about Oreos. I don't care about peanut butter cups. I don't care about M&Ms. It's been a process. And I learned that from a self-help book. So it can be helpful, but it can't be the only thing in my humble
in
opinion.
your arsenal. That's one thing that's good about visiting Laura's house is there's always going to be peanut butter cups and there's usually going to be Oreos.
And I noticed my Oreos are stale now because I
Right.
don't care about them. But it took me like 2 years to get there. It wasn't quick. It's been a process. I went through every type of Oreo. We started with the original, moved to peanut butter, moved to golden Oreos. Those were actually trickier than the original.
Because that's new.
And now I don't really care about any of them.
What was your favorite Oreo out of the novelty Oreos?
I think it's golden Oreos. Those were the best.
They're actually the bomb.
The peanut butter ones are pretty good, but they just got tiresome after a while. You know, it's the worst one. If anyone's interested, toffee flavored Oreos are super gross.
My favorite Oreos, if you're shopping for me, are at Trader Joe's. They're the holiday peppermint JoJo's Oreo light cookie.
I do like the holiday JoJo's. That's not something I'm really tempted to eat a whole bunch of. Virginia, if anyone wants to find out about your comedy career, how would they go about doing that?
You can find me on the internet at www.bidinia.com. As we approach the holiday season, I have created a downloadable calendar for anyone to use. You can print it on letter-sized paper. Every month does have a picture of me on it. If you work in an office, you can print it on a color printer for free. You can also find me at Bidinia on TikTok and on Instagram and pretty much every place hooked to the word Bidinia. Laura, where can people find you or the podcast on the internet?
Well, they can find me at my professional website, lauraryan.org. They can also find me on my TikTok page. I am Laura Ryan. If they're interested in checking out the website, our website is mysistersatherapist.com. And we're also on Instagram, My Sisters a Therapist Instagram. If you are interested in giving us show topics or you want to tell us how great you think we are, you can email us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you would like to send some money our way or give us an opportunity to advertise for your product or brand, you can do that at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com.
Looking forward to hearing from Sunday Riley and Liquid Death.
And Target and AAA. And Costco.
Laura, this is the part of the show where you sometimes read a listener review. Do you have one to share this week?
I most certainly do. This is an Apple podcast review from The Geeks Strike Back. The title is Unfiltered, Uplifting, and Unforgettable. Thank you, Laura and Virginia, for a truly wonderful podcast. With every episode, I seem to come away with at least one, but usually more ideas or ways to cope with my awkward human interactions. You have helped me to become a better person, and I find every episode to be so validating. This podcast is full of solid, straightforward information that will help you on your path. Word of warning, you really have to plan your listening locales. I was recently on a long flight, laughing to myself like a psycho. Thanks again on behalf of everyone you're helping. Thank you, The Geek Strikes Back.
Wow. If you're thinking to yourself, I'd like to write a review, but I can't write anything as beautiful and heartfelt as The Geek Strikes Back, you don't have to. You can just say, haha, this was good.
It's
I love
cool.
you.
Thanks so much.
Thumbs
5
up.
stars.
I was worried when they said that you have to watch your listening area that we've made them cry, which sometimes I also cry to podcasts. Thank you. That's very affirming.
It is quite affirming. So if you would like to write us a review, you can go to Apple Podcasts. We also have reviews on Spotify now. So if you want to write a review on Spotify and tell us how great you think we are, we would really appreciate it.
And if you're shy, you can just shoot us an email. I'd like to close the show with the inspirational words of the amazing Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn.
The underrated Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn.
When he said, "We can make it, baby."
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.